All right. It is 7 o'clock and we'll call the Dunn County Board meeting to order, September meeting. Welcome everyone coming back after a month off. And welcome to anyone else that is out there listening to us. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Miller will put the flag on our screen. There it is. Okay. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will have the clerk call the roll.
Supervisor Johnson,
Here.
Chairman Bartlett, Supervisor Headland,
Here.
Supervisor Score, Supervisor Steen,
Here.
Supervisor Zons,
Here.
Supervisor Gary Bjork,
Here.
Supervisor Maves,
Here.
Supervisor Quinn,
Here.
Supervisor Rogers,
Here.
Supervisor Anderson,
Here.
Supervisor Kinnear,
Here.
Supervisor Crumry, Supervisor Crumry, Supervisor Calabrese,
Here.
Supervisor Keeter,
Here.
Supervisor Vogel,
Here.
Supervisor McCullough,
Here.
Supervisor Story,
Here.
Supervisor Vandermeulen,
Here.
Supervisor Niehoff,
Here.
Supervisor Morehouse,
Here.
Supervisor Kennedy,
Here.
Supervisor Tripp,
Here.
Supervisor Prochnow, Supervisor Prochnow, Supervisor Prochnow, Supervisor Jensen,
Here.
Supervisor Larry Bjork,
Here.
Supervisor Bauer,
Here.
Supervisor Leno,
Here.
Supervisor Hartung,
Here.
and I'll just try Supervisor Prochnow again.
I think he's having issues with his audio.
Okay, I've got him recorded as present.
Okay.
All right, next we'll have the approval of the minutes, and we have one correction that our clerk will call our attention to.
So on page 3, under resolution 32, in the discussion of the minutes of the resolution, it should read Supervisor Steen, Leno, Tripp, McCullough, and Headland spoke in opposition of the resolution, and Supervisors Larry Bjork and Rogers spoke in favor. So I wanted to note that correction.
All right, with that correction, we need a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Morehouse will move approval of the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Supervisor Morehouse moves, and
Second, McCullough.
Supervisor McCullough seconds. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and other communications, we have none tonight. Appointments, we have none tonight. Report of the county manager. FY 2021 budget process. Mr. Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. What I can report on the fiscal year 21 budget preparation is that after the initial budget was presented at the end of July, each of the standing committees had an opportunity to review those draft budgets and forward their recommendations on any changes and endorsements of those budgets to the executive committee. The executive committee met twice this month to go over the budget in detail, along with consideration of a draft balanced budget presented by the county manager and CFO. A lengthy and detailed review that involved considerable discussion and some very hard decisions. At the end of the meeting, last meeting, which was in fact today, they had made decisions that would result carried out to a balanced budget for fiscal year 21 for the county. Some of the highlights when it comes to pay, the adjustment to our pay grid for employees of 2%, but a 1-year freeze on the normal steps that employees have. Normally, we have 11 steps in each year. Employee, upon successful completion of their duties for the year, advances a step. We are putting a freeze on it due to budget considerations and fiscal restraints. There's also adjustments to the benefits, to the health insurance benefits in particular. The changes that are now being proposed include a 2% increase to the premium payments by employees. The deductibles remain the same, but the co-pays will change, as will the maximum out-of-pocket expenses. Other highlights of the budget, as discussed, is an adjustment to the amount we maintain in our fund balance from 35% down to 30%, which is about as low as we want to go, but we needed the additional revenue in order to make a balanced budget. The budget includes certain capital expenses as well, for which the proposal is to seek to borrow, take on some debt. Some of the elements there includes the remote access software and hardware that's needed for the third courthouse for the new judge. Also phasing of the necessary repairs to our judicial center. And we need to replace the south or main parking lot at the community services building. There are other elements to it as well, but those are the highlights, some of the highlights of the budget as proposed. Going forward, we will pull together, staff will, this budget into a more complete form by the end of this month, and by the start of October, we'll distribute that balanced budget recommended by the executive committee, or worked out by the executive committee, to all supervisors. It will be distributed for review by the standing committees as well, not as an action item seeking additional input, but as review, so that you have a complete understanding and have an opportunity to go over the particulars. In the October meeting of the executive committee will be another opportunity to put any final touches on the fiscal year 21 budget, with an eye toward advancing a resolution for the levy to the full county board at its November meeting, which is our required deadline. So stay tuned. Invite any questions that you may have with respect to the fiscal year 21 budget process as it stands today.
Are there any questions at this time? You should probably let the supervisors know what the plan is to send out the budget to them, please.
We will be sending it out electronically in the form of a PDF that you ought to be able to view on your computers. Hopefully everybody will get that. If you have any problems at all with that, please contact staff. We'll make sure you get the information.
And the time frame for that will be about the end of the month, correct?
Yes, right around the 1st of October, we hope to do that. That's what we're going to work very hard to achieve. There's a lot of detail work that has to be done applying these numbers. There's detail work that may result in minor changes, but hopefully they are minor, and don't require any further major decision points.
Any questions at this time?
Supervisor Kinnear here, Chairman Bartlett.
Okay. Supervisor Kinnear, and I think Supervisor Rogers is next. Go ahead.
I have a question for Supervisor Headland. I'm just wondering how many of the past years have we done something like freezing steps or changed the deductible or changed the benefits for the county employees?
You got me?
Yes.
Yep.
We've done this last year. In fact, we did have a small raise in percentage to the employees as far as cost of the insurance, the cost that they pay, which resulted in apparently not enough, as our fund balance for that insurance program is been depleted below a recommended standard. We, in fact, I guess in my recollection is that I'm not sure of the year, but about 4 years ago, we made a major adjustment of 7.5% to the hourly associates after we did a wage study of neighboring counties. I guess those are the two standout things that I can think of right now.
Thank you.
And I may offer, Mr. Chairman, that staff recollection is that we have in the past, at least once, done a 0% on wages.
Supervisor Rogers, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. I have a question. So why is the budget, all of these done at the executive committee? I guess it's just, I'm wondering why it's done at the executive committee and not the board itself. And a second part of that, if we attend the executive committee during this discussion, the other supervisors have no opportunity to speak. Can you just clarify why that is? Why none of the other supervisors have any input?
Would you like me to take that, or do you want to? I can do it.
Go ahead.
Sure. The executive committee is the finance committee for the county board. As you know, most of the business that the county board conducts is first vetted through committees. That's how we do our work. And those committees forward their recommendations for any actions of the county board. Supervisors have the opportunity to participate, obviously, at the standing committee level, and they have an opportunity to weigh in through communication with one another and communication with staff throughout the budget process, up to and including the night that the budget is in front of the entire county board for adoption. But in particular, if there are any elements of that draft budget that's being proposed between the start at the end of July and October in particular, that opportunity exists to prevail upon the members of the executive committee to advocate on your behalf, or even to prevail upon the chair of the executive committee for an opportunity to address the executive committee as part of their deliberations. That's something that any supervisor could request.
And we should probably add that the October board meeting would be the meeting that if a supervisor felt that the budget should be amended, would be the time to bring that forward at the October meeting. And that's when we will go over the budget. And then hopefully after that, we will end up with a budget that we can pass in November. But if we're going to try to do some amendments, we should do them in October, because we don't want to try to do a budget amendment in November at the meeting. The time is short at that point, and it's tough to do that. Does that answer your questions, Supervisor Rogers?
It answers my questions. I don't necessarily completely agree, but
Right.
yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we will move on with the county manager's report to COVID-19.
Just an update for all supervisors. I did send out an email earlier today on the total number of positive cases, confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Dunn County. Actually, the number has gone up even since this afternoon's report. We are now at a total of 308 positives since this pandemic began here in Dunn County. Most notably, that represents a jump of 43 positives since Monday. So we are experiencing a surge right now that has raised our standing to a high burden of COVID-19. It's, as I said in my email, a statistically significant increase that highlights our need for continued diligence in taking those steps that we have been taking to try to protect others and ourselves from possible transmission. One area that came out today that I think bears repeating, we've had a couple of cases here locally of individuals who, for good reason, got a COVID test and then went out and interacted with others in public settings. And then subsequently to that, found out the test came back positive, which means that the people with whom they interacted were potentially exposed to the virus. And the lesson there that we need to communicate to everybody is if you have good reason to be tested for COVID-19, you have good reason to remain isolated until the results of that test are known in order to protect others. So it is still a pandemic. It is still going on. I wish I could say that this surge was unexpected, but we did expect it to happen. And we can expect these numbers to continue to go up for a while here with the schools back in session. I've talked with KT Gallagher, our public health director. The public health department is working very closely with our school districts and with the university on their COVID-19 response and protocols, and we'll be taking steps to adjust to situations, on the ground situations, cases of confirmed COVID-19. They will be taking steps to adjust their protocols as necessary to try to protect our student population and the broader community in general. I don't know if there are any questions, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions on the COVID-19 report?
I'd like to have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Bjork.
Of the Dunn County citizens that have tested positive, how many are in ICU of the hospital?
I'll defer to KT Gallagher. She's with us on this meeting.
Sure. So I'm grateful to report that currently we don't have anybody in ICU. We still have folks that are hospitalized, but they have stepped down from being ventilated and they are working towards recovery.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor Bjork? All right. Any other Supervisor Larry Bjork and then Supervisor Vandermeulen after that? Yes, go ahead.
My question to the statistics have always been, what are the active cases? I find it misleading almost that we keep track of cases that had tested positive 3 or 4 months ago, and we still seem to carry that number and carry forward that number, the 300, whatever it was. I mean, when you give us information about current activity with the COVID, and that just seems to be relevant and pertinent. And people that tested positive in Dunn County 4 or 5 months ago just seems to be a waste of statistics as far as I'm concerned, and doesn't do anything to heighten the degree of care that we should be taking.
There is a value, Supervisor Bjork, in tracking the total number of cases that we encounter throughout the duration of the pandemic as a measure of its spread and impact to a community. People recover, it is true, and that's certainly what we hope in every case. The possibility of reinfection, of course, exists with this particular virus. There are cases where people contract COVID-19 twice. But the broader point is in terms of the impact to the community, it is absolutely germane and important to keep track of the total number of people who have contracted, just as it's appropriate to keep track of the total number of people in the county. We have a population, and the number of positive cases is indicative of the spread throughout that total population, even though if they're not currently sick. And I don't know if KT Gallagher has anything to add to that.
Sure. So thank you for that observation. I think that many people have voiced the same concern. And so you'll see on our 3 times a week update on social media that we do reflect the number of active cases so that you can follow that number as well. Right now, we're running at about 20% currently active. We are seeing an incredible pickup in our number of active cases over recovered cases. And then one of the other things that we watch is the activity level that's put forward by DHS's website. And so that is an average number of cases over 2 weeks and the change in those cases. So that's a very germane and timely number. Another number that I'm watching and I think is important to recognize is our average daily cases. And so you can see that by going to the Harvard Global Public Health website where they actually map this. And right now we're sitting at about 7.7 cases a day for a 7-day average. And so that is, again, a very timely measure of how many cases we're working through daily for an average of 1 week.
And a final observation, by keeping track of the total number for this pandemic, we also put ourselves in a better position for gauging future pandemics in terms of the potential scale and the potential impact to the population, to the economy. We try to learn from things that have happened in the past. We know there will be pandemics in the future, and getting a sense of the virility, if you will, the number of people that might face contracting a disease and having to deal with it, the number of fatalities, not only in our region, but our country and across the world, is a very important number to track and to process as we gauge not the response to the particular pandemic and also set ourselves up for a better response for future.
Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Yeah, I wondered, when people are tested locally, how long does it take them to get the result?
So that's a great question and is dependent on your health system. So right now we are seeing a turnaround of about a day using the Mayo system. We continue to enjoy about 24 to 48 hours from the State Lab of Hygiene when we test using the State Lab of Hygiene. And then Marshfield is able to turn around the student tests for PCR within, again, about 20 to 24 hours. And then Prevea at this moment is taking about 3 days, sometimes a little more.
Thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Jensen.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you when the test is taken, if it tests for different strains of the virus, or if it's a test is a test and it just prove a positive, or is there a difference in the strains?
Supervisor Jensen, I think I understand your question to mean, are there different types of tests and do they look for different things?
So different strains.
Different strains. So when we do a PCR test, we're not sequencing the genome of the virus. So we're not looking for different strains of the virus within individuals. That's typically a more research-based test versus what we run here, which is a PCR test for absence or presence. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
Are there any other questions about COVID? Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Question for KT. And as far as Dunn County's responsibility and cost, you know, eventually there's going to be a vaccine, or I don't know if that's the proper term or not. What do you think will be Dunn County's role in administrating that? And what kind of cost do you think that we could expect from that? And just any information, I mean, I'd like to see, you know, an end game kind of put together before it's actually the end of the game.
Sure. So we are working with our federal and state partners currently about planning for vaccine receipt and delivery here locally. It's still a little premature, but they are starting those conversations. We did receive in writing that there is funding for COVID-19 response into 2021. And we are working to reflect that in an update to my budget. So costs are hard to gauge at this moment because there is still a lot of federal funding and state funding that's being allocated to the locals for that specific delivery, in addition to the contacts tracing and disease case management that will continue to do well into 2021.
Are there any other questions concerning COVID? Supervisor Rogers and then Supervisor Neoff.
I do like what Larry did say about reporting the active cases. It can get a little muddled when you put all of them there and then we don't know what the actual current status is. You've said there's a spike and it's hard to tell that when it mixes in with all of the numbers. So I think he makes a legitimate point there.
Okay, Supervisor Neoff.
I just have a question in regards to the testing process, and I kind of want to wrap this into what Paul was alluding to earlier in regards to how when we get tested, we need to stay home until we get the results. I know that when early on in this whole process, my wife got real sick and she was tested way back in March. And she was given a packet of information on the behaviors of what she was supposed to do during the time frame that she was waiting for the test. And I mean, she had to take her temperature every day. She wasn't supposed to go anywhere. I mean, is anything like that provided to these individuals that are tested when they are tested?
Yes, sir, by all of our partners. They do get a packet.
Are there any other questions at this point? If not, seeing none, we will move on with a report on solid waste and recycling program.
Just briefly, I think everybody is aware of this, but our solid waste and recycling program will come to an end effective January 1st. Our municipal partners who provide the operating capital necessary after we presented the necessary per capita rate to sustain operations in 21 at approximately $60 per capita. The majority of them determined that they felt they could reach a lower amount by going independently, either as their own responsible unit or perhaps in coalitions of townships. And so they, most of them, 26 of them, indicated they would exercise their discretion to withdraw from the county's solid waste and recycling program. The result being that we do not have the operating expenses necessary in order to sustain operations. So we will be closing operations at the end of the year. We will be no longer operate the remote sites or the transfer station. There's a related question that has come up on the referendum question about solid waste and recycling that this board voted to include on the ballot for November. That referendum was for capital improvements and for funding for a clean sweep That's the hazardous household waste programs. That will remain on the ballot. The decision was made. The time to change the ballots has passed, long since passed. But the question that'll be put to people will be, is discretionary, that the county may assess up to $1 million for each year for 5 years for those purposes, capital improvements in the clean sweep. That may word is discretionary and includes 0%. If we have no program for which we need capital improvements, my anticipation is that there will be no assessment of that should that referendum pass, which of course is a big question if it will. So yes, you will see that on the ballot, but it does not mean if it did pass that the program will be reopened, because the referendum is not intended to provide operating funds for the solid waste and recycling program. And that's what we do not have, and thus cannot sustain that solid waste and recycling program. I don't know if there's any questions on that issue.
Supervisor Kennedy.
I just have a question on, will employees be losing positions here due to this?
There will be some positions that will cease. There will be some that'll go to half-time. But yes, there will be employees who will no longer be able to be employed because their salaries were paid for by the funds raised for operating.
Supervisor Gary Burke.
Thank you, sir. I just have like a few notes I'd like to give to the county board. And we have adjusted our budget for 2021 to cover cost of closing down. We will start selling equipment, and that money plus our fund balance will pay back our loan from the county fund balance of $337,000. The department proposed levy for 2021 was approximately $150 per household. One township is paying $216 per household, and I think the chairman's has been quoted a higher amount than that for his township. And these were what's from private vendors. One of our best services at Dunn County Solid Waste and Recycling was that we were a one-stop place for solid waste recycling, plus items that could not go into solid waste or recycling, such as electronics, light bulbs, demolition appliances, CO2, propane canisters, used oil, and oil filters. Of our 7 collection sites, 6 of them have had conversation from surrounding municipalities of taking them over. And because not knowing what the future holds, and comments from concerned citizens, in fact, I just had 2 of them today. We do not at this time plan on selling the transfer station or the 28 acres next to it. So I've been, like I said, I've been getting quite a few emails from citizens that are very concerned that they like the service that they got, but our price just was not competitive to the municipalities. But I think in the future that they might look back and say that that $60 per person was not a bad buy. So thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Keither.
Thank you. I was wondering if other counties are having the same problems with a breakup like we're having?
My understanding, Supervisor Keeter, is that what we are experiencing is not unique. Others are struggling as well. No, it's not necessarily the case that any 2 counties are identical in terms of what they provide. Not all of them have a solid waste program. Not all of the counties operate a recycling program. Recycling programs maybe at the city level or at the township level. But what we're experiencing, in my estimation, is largely a result of factors beyond our control, most notably the change from China in terms of what it would accept in the way of recyclables from the United States. The recycling, the income that we receive from recycling largely subsidized our other efforts. And when those funds dried up, it put the entire recycling industry in the United States into crisis mode. So across the country, we're seeing a rash of similar problems with programs that are suddenly unable to sustain themselves.
Any other questions? If not, Supervisor Kinnear, and then Supervisor Jensen.
Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. Just a comment, I want to echo Supervisor Gary Bjork's comments. We had a fantastic program. And just to emphasize, some people don't understand, the per capita was $60 plus per year. It was an excellent deal, and I'm sorry to see it go. And I guess that's my comment. Thank you.
Supervisor Jensen.
The recycling is not cost efficient anymore. Do you think that there will be something that will happen that will end the recycling? Or is this just a phase that we're going to live through for a little while here? Or if anybody has any comments on that?
Sure. Supervisor Jensen, recycling in Wisconsin is mandated. There must be the mandated recyclables, your paper, cardboard, glasses, certain plastics are required to be recycled. And if it isn't the county that's the responsible unit, then it's the municipalities that must be a responsible unit, and they're mandated to provide that service. So that's got to be met. There are administrative costs, there are operational costs for operating a recycling program. Solid waste is often wrapped into that because the haulers who pick up solid waste or garbage also typically pick up the mandated recycling. The speculation about the future is a matter of wait and see. We know that the haulers will do the mandated materials, but as Supervisor Gary Bjork pointed out, it's the non-mandated things that people seek to recycle that aren't typically part of those agreements, your tires and light bulbs and batteries, things of that nature. What will become of those is going to be tough. The haulers will take them for a fee. Whether or not people are willing to pay that fee remains to be seen. And as our municipalities begin to operate their own responsible units for recycling, they're going to go through a learning curve themselves. Will they come back to the county at some point in the future and ask if we can, again, join forces and try to reach some economies of scale by working together? I don't know. We'll see.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
If not, Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Mr. Miller made an interesting comment there as far as counties working together. Will there be, and who would be involved in, contacting other counties? What committee, or what it was, solid waste committee? I mean, should there be a discussion going on that the counties do consider a group of counties addressing some of these problems that everybody's going to have? Who would handle that?
The Solid Waste Committee has done that, and in fact, they have had some conversation over the past few years about that. Supervisor Maves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of comments to make. It's a sad day, what's going to happen on the 31st, because the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee has for years kept the dollar cost down for all the residents of Dunn County. And it was because of the worldwide, what all happened. We lost one of our main sources through the recycling. But the fact that a lot of the towns just all of a sudden, when they saw that sticker shock, just like, oh, we got to get out of the county. And I'm hearing reports, as has already been stated, about they're actually going to be paying more and for getting less service. So it's upsetting to me, the fact that so many just jumped ship so fast. And I know the timing was bad. There were a lot of things that went wrong here. But one of the questions that I feel that the county board needs to start considering, since we are going to disband on the 30th or January 1st, is the garbage that ends up in the ditches now or in the future. who's going to pay for the pickup and the disposal of that? And by that, I mean, if you're on a county highway and there's garbage, there's a TV and a sofa and a chair in the ditch, who's going to be responsible for picking it up? And who's going to be paying for it? Because if it's, and I make this reference to, like, if there's an accident, like on a county road, and it's a road that borders between two different towns, it all depends where the accident or the car ends up as to where the billing goes. So I'm just throwing it out for things we're going to want to, in my opinion, discuss as to who is actually going to pay for this stuff that's going to get picked up if we decide to pick it up. Will it be the county or will it be the local towns that the stuff is picked up in? Thank you.
All right, that's a good comment, and we're going to have to see what a couple of committees come up with for ideas on that. Any other comments? Questions? Seeing none, we will move on with the county manager's report with 7D purchase orders in excess of $40,000.
Supervisors should have seen the list of purchase orders over $40,000 that was included in the packet of materials that were distributed for this meeting. As always, Highway has a number of large purchases related to oil and hot mix. We have the hauling for the landfill, purchase of equipment for public works. You may have noted a large amount of money on bond services under Department of Administration, Associated Trust Company. That's a semi-annual payment on those existing bonds. It comes to approximately $2.28 million, but that is a semi-annual payment that we make. Any questions on the purchase orders?
Seeing none. Moving forward with reports of departments. We have the Corporation Council, Fair Board Facilities, and the West Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. You've all had those in your packet. Are there any questions on any of them? We have people from quite a few of them that maybe we could answer questions if there is any. All right, I do not see any questions on those reports. Moving forward then, we have a report from the from committees. The Committee on Resources and Tourism would like to give a report. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1 week ago, executive meeting, I requested to be able to report to you today. And since that time, we've had another executive meeting, and this afternoon, our Dunn County Economic Development Board met. And I just wanted to share this with you because I think all of you need to know. While I request to fund Dunn County EDC for next year of $70,000 and for our request from CR&T of $15,000 to begin something in broadband was denied, we understand that. And so this afternoon at our Dunn County Economic Development Board, we said, all right, we will meet again next week and we'll come back to a plan of how we can keep Dunn County Economic Development Board functioning without support from the county, financial support. And this way we feel we can continue to carry out some of the broadband services that's needed through rural Dunn County, at least by able to be working with the providers and doing that work. And we feel that it's important that you know that these tough financial situations, trying to balance the budget, that the CR&T committee is going to find a way to continue to provide this service without financial aid from Dunn County. I'm very happy to report that to you. It's not going to be easy, But I think right now, when every agency and everybody's looking at cuts, that we got to accept that this is a huge, big problem. And I'm happy to report to you that the Dunn County Executive Board says, all right, we understand. We're going to find a way to try to keep it functioning and going next year. And I'm sharing this with you because I think every one of you and every department is going to feel a pinch. We feel it. And we're meeting next Monday again at a special meeting to come up with a plan so that we can continue the Dunn County Economic Development Board. 17 people on this board. One of them also is on this board, an executive board, Supervisor Steen. But it wasn't easy, but I'm here to share with you that when we get cut and when budgets don't go our way, we find a way to make it work. And Mr. Chairman, you know how passionate I felt about this, but we find a way and we're going to make it work. And I want every supervisor to know that Dunn County Economic Development is going to find a way to continue to function next year, maybe not the full level that you expect. That's my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 10, consideration of resolutions, reports, and ordinances from the standing committees. From the Executive Committee, 10A1, a resolution approving the FY20 budget adjustments for human services and public health departments. We have that in our packet. Pretty good explanation on the third page for background information. I need a motion for this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the budget adjustments for Health and Human Services.
Supervisor Morehouse moves. Supervisor, I didn't catch who that was.
Oh, Supervisor McCullough.
Supervisor McCullough, thank you. Are there any questions? I do not see any. All right. This roll call vote. Yep, this is a roll call vote, so the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Niehoff.
Yes.
Supervisor Niehoff recorded as yes. Supervisor Prochnow.
Yes.
Supervisor Prochnow recorded as yes. Supervisor Quinn.
Yes.
Supervisor Quinn recorded as yes. Supervisor Rogers.
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers recorded as yes. Supervisor Score.
Yes.
Supervisor Score recorded as yes. Supervisor Steen.
Yes.
Supervisor Steen recorded as yes. Supervisor Story.
Yes.
Supervisor Story recorded as yes. Supervisor Tripp.
Yes.
Supervisor Tripp recorded as yes. Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Yes.
Supervisor Vandermeulen recorded as yes. Supervisor Vogel.
Yes.
Supervisor Vogel recorded as yes. Supervisor Zons.
Yes.
Supervisor Zons recorded as yes. Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson recorded as yes. Supervisor Bauer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bauer recorded as yes. Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Gary Bjork recorded as yes. Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork recorded as yes. Supervisor Calabrese.
Yes.
Supervisor Calabrese recorded as yes. Supervisor Hartung.
Yes.
Supervisor Hartung recorded as yes. Supervisor Headland.
Yes.
Supervisor Headland recorded as yes. Supervisor Jensen. Supervisor Jensen.
Yes.
Supervisor Jensen recorded as yes. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson recorded as yes. Supervisor Kennedy.
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy recorded as yes. Supervisor Kinnear.
Yes.
Supervisor Kinnear recorded as yes. Supervisor Crumry, absent. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter recorded as yes. Supervisor Leno.
Yes.
Supervisor Leno recorded as yes. Supervisor Maves.
Yes.
Supervisor Maves recorded as yes. Supervisor McCullough.
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough recorded as yes. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse recorded as yes. Chairman Bartlett.
Yes.
Chairman Bartlett recorded as yes.
All right, the motion passes. Moving on to 10A2, resolution approving a FY20 budget adjustment for Environmental Services Department. That also, we have the background information in the packet. I need a motion for this. Supervisor Quinn moves. Is there a second? Supervisor Anderson seconds. Any questions? Background information was self-explanatory, I believe. If no questions, this also is a roll call vote, and the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Prochnow.
Yes.
Supervisor Prochnow recorded as yes. Supervisor Quinn.
Yes.
Supervisor Quinn recorded as yes. Supervisor Rogers.
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers recorded as yes. Supervisor Score. Was that yes? Supervisor Score recorded as yes. Supervisor Steen.
Yes.
Supervisor Steen recorded as yes. Supervisor Story.
Yes.
Supervisor Story recorded as yes. Supervisor Tripp.
Yes.
Supervisor Tripp recorded as yes. Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Yes.
Supervisor Vandermeulen recorded as yes. Supervisor Vogel.
Yes.
Supervisor Vogel recorded as yes. Supervisor Zons.
Yes.
Supervisor Zons recorded as yes. Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson recorded as yes. Supervisor Bauer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bauer recorded as yes. Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Gary Bjork recorded as yes. Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork recorded as yes. Supervisor Calabrese.
Yes.
Supervisor Calabrese recorded as yes. Supervisor Hartung.
Yes.
Supervisor Hartung recorded as yes. Supervisor Headland.
Yes.
Supervisor Headland recorded as yes. Supervisor Jensen.
Yes.
Supervisor Jensen recorded as yes. Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Johnson. I'll come back. Supervisor Kennedy.
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy recorded as yes. Supervisor Kinnear.
Yes.
Supervisor Kinnear recorded as yes. Supervisor Crumry absent. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter recorded as yes. Supervisor Leno.
Yes.
Supervisor Leno recorded as yes. Supervisor Maves. Supervisor Maves. Okay. Supervisor Maves recorded as yes. Supervisor McCullough.
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough recorded as yes. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse recorded as yes. Supervisor Niehoff.
Yes.
Supervisor Niehoff recorded as yes. Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Johnson.
I am not seeing him in the list anymore. He
Thank
might have
you.
had connection issues.
Thank you. Chairman Bartlett.
Yes,
Chairman Bartlett recorded as yes.
and the motion passes. Moving on to 10B, Facilities Committee. 10B1, resolution approving an amendment to the lease with the Menominee Youth Hockey League. I need a motion for this.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Maves moves, Supervisor Steen seconds. Speaking to the resolution, Supervisor Maves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your packet, it explains what this is about. And what it is back when the holding pond was built on 17th Avenue there, the descriptions for parcel A, parcel B got turned around. So this is just correcting the descriptions of the land. So it is parcel A is now described as parcel A and parcel B is described as parcel B. That's what this is.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair? This is
Yes,
Tripp.
Supervisor Tripp.
Can somebody tell us what parcel A and parcel B are?
Yes. Corporation Counsel can.
One of them is the parcel that lies west of 17th Street where the holding pond is. And the other parcel is the footprint. If you recall that terminology, the line, imaginary line that's drawn around the area, around the Finetti Center and some of the fair related buildings that are pertinent to that, the ag building, and some of the parking lot out on the east side of the building. And I think A is where the retention pond is now, and B is the area in the fairground, the building and adjacent area.
Thank you. Would it be safe for me to assume then that this is really simply just a mistake? Because did the Hockey Association ever have any interest in the parcel that now holds the holding pond?
They did.
They did.
It is a mistake, and I made it. I transposed the letters when I was drafting an amendment about 5 years ago, in order to accommodate the city of Menominee's forecast that there was a retention pond going in somewhere, and they like that spot. So after some discussion, the Hockey Association agreed to let it go. They had originally long ago planned to have a parking lot there, so it was included in their area of control.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry for the mistake.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Supervisor Kennedy.
Was that the only change to the lease?
At this time.
At this time, yes.
Sorry. Any other questions? If not, all in favor of this resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to 10B2, resolution regarding deer hunting in Menomen Park. Supervisor Maves moves, Supervisor Lino seconds, and speaking to the resolution, Supervisor Maves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here again in your packets was the information, and this was actually a policy that had been going on for some time, but there was never really any written agreement. There was the city of Menominee had been regulating the herd control out there in Menomen Park all along, and it was just brought to our attention a few years ago that there was not a written document that actually supported that or who would do what. And we looked back through the records, and it was just one of them verbal agreements that took place years ago. And so now this is moving forward to actually have an intergovernmental cooperative agreement between the city of Menominee and Dunn County as far as for the deer herd control. And there's as you could see in the packet and the information that was sent out to you, that the city of Menominee will authorize it, but the hunter has to pass quite a few checks, including a competency as using the bow and arrow and etc. So this is actually just getting a paper copy on record as to who does what as far as the deer control in Menomen Park.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Any announcements? Oh, petition. Yes, I'm supposed to remind everybody that you don't have to come in and sign the petition. You have to send an email reply to our clerk. She sent out an email a week ago or so. And just reply to her, not reply all. And we need that so we can have a meeting, so we can change the date of our October meeting to accommodate the time frame that we need to do for our budget. So anything else from any of the supervisors? Supervisor Kennedy.
I have a question on the packets.
You're
I'm sorry. Are we no longer getting sent packets? We're just getting them by email, or what's happening there?
correct. We've tried to go with electronic versions. So that is the form that you're getting. If you want a paper packet, you could, of course, print it out yourself. Sometimes in a packet, you may want a few, what I have found sometimes in a packet of especially committee meetings, there's certain pages I would like in paper, but I don't need them all. So,
Well, I was just curious. I no longer have a printer. I intend to get a new one. So,
okay.
Because it's much easier for me to follow along if I can read what's going on.
Yes.
So thank you for your answer.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman?
Any other questions? Supervisor Larry Bjork first, and then Supervisor Jensen.
I also have a problem with the packets. There was no acknowledgement that to be a county board member, you needed to have a printer. And we have a printer.
You're muted, Supervisor Bjork.
Okay, how about now?
Now
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, we just got a printer working here on Monday. And I did not have, so I run the printer thinking I'm getting the whole packet. And I could have come to town and got the missing pieces, but I did not have in my packet that the computer presented me, I did not have the purchase orders over $40,000, and I didn't have a report on corporate counsel, and I didn't have a report on fair board facilities. But I did get the report, I think it was 17 pages of the West Central Regional that printed out. And then in the mail today, I got the same pages from West Central Regional Planning. So it's like, I got a half an inch of paper on regional planning, but I don't have purchase orders over 40,000. I don't have corporate counsel, and I don't have fair board facilities. So if this is going to continue, we're going to have to find a way that either buy me a better printer, or how can you participate in the meeting when you don't have the paperwork to go with it? Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments.
I just have one more question.
Supervisor Jensen, I think, had a comment next.
Yeah, I was wondering on a mail, when we get that, if they can be taken, so when you're looking at them, they're upright and just be able to slide them over. Otherwise, I have a hard time when they're sideways. I turn my phone sideways and then they flip the other direction.
That happens to be also.
If there's a
Maybe,
way to solve that.
maybe our IT department can look into that. I don't know if there is a way to solve that, but if there is, I'm sure they'll look into that for us.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Kennedy, you had something?
Well, I was just wondering, is the recycling doesn't go out until the end of the year, correct? So if I
Correct.
have a couple of printers that I need to take to recycling, can I take them there at this point yet?
Yes, get them there before the first of the year.
Thanks very much.
All right. Anything else? All right. County Manager, Mr. Miller, I know we've talked about getting computers for everybody. Will that be yet this year?
The money, we're using the COVID-19 relief funds, the routes to recovery funds to purchase those. My hope is that it will be yet this year, yes.
Okay. Some of this problem may be repaired or help anyway with our problems when we all get a county computer that we will only use for county business, that may help with some of our struggles. So, and we expect that yet this year. So if there's nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting. And thank you very much for everybody coming. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Dave. Good night, all.
Have a good night now.
Paul, if you could stop the live stream.
Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Mary Ellen.
Oh, you guys.